When most people think about classical music, they think about Bach or Mozart or Beethoven, singable melodies and clear harmonies. However, as music progressed into the 20th century, classical composers were faced with a challenge. They had exhausted the bounds of traditional harmony. The natural progression of harmony combined with shock and grief from the aftermath of the World Wars led many composers to experiment with new techniques and ideas, including atonal music, chance music, electronic music, and much more. One pioneering leader in experimental music was John Cage, an American composer and theorist. Though many of his pieces border the absurd, his bold foray into the avant-garde has had a monumental impact on contemporary music and has forced audiences to consider this highly important question. Is there a difference between music and noise? Before we dive into this fascinating topic, don't forget to hit subscribe. Remember to turn on notifications so that you'll be updated anytime a new video is posted. John Cage was born on September 5, 1912, in Los Angeles, California. His father was an inventor who instilled in his son an open mind and the belief that anything is possible, regardless of the doubts of others. Cage began studying piano in the 4th grade, but he did not demonstrate a desire nor a prodigious talent to become a virtuoso performer. Instead, he showed more interest in sight reading and discovering new ways to play the instrument. Cage did not initially intend to have a musical career. He wanted to be a writer. In 1928, he began studies in theology at Pomona College, where he received access to many interesting writers, artists, and intellectuals. However, he did not ultimately believe that college served him, and only 2 years later he dropped out. He decided to educate himself by traveling, moving to Europe for the following year and a half. During his travels, he began composing. In 1933, after deciding to pursue music full-time, Cage moved to New York City to take lessons with Adolph Weiss and Henry Cowell. Eventually, this led him to study with Arnold Schoenberg, one of the most influential figures of modern music. Cage's early music was in the 12-tone style that Schoenberg developed, but he soon began to experiment even further. Some of his early experimental music began around 1940 and involved compositions for prepared piano. He would put objects on top of or in between the strings or hammers of the piano, which would alter the sound. His most famous works for prepared piano are a collection called Sonatas and Interludes, written between 1946 and 1948. He also did some experimentation with tape recording and electronic music. Cage was also deeply influenced by Eastern music and culture. He attended numerous lectures on Zen Buddhism and also wrote several pieces inspired by Indian concepts. In the early 1950s, he was introduced to the Chinese text, the I Ching, which outlined a system that used symbols to make sense of chance occurrences. Cage used this system in nearly all of his consequent compositions. When composing works such as his famous Music for Changes, he would ask the I Ching various questions in order to make decisions about what to write, leaving the composition process somewhat up to chance. This kind of music came to be known as indeterminate music. In 1952, Cage composed what has become perhaps his best-known work, 4 minutes, 33 seconds. In this piece, the performer sits on stage for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, playing no instruments and making no purposeful sound. Instead, the music in the piece stems from the various sounds in the audience, perhaps a clearing of the throat, a creak in a chair, or a cough. This piece raised tough questions for musicians about the difference between noise and music, and what could truly be considered art. Although Cage's compositions and philosophies were always controversial, he became widely acknowledged as a pioneering figure in avant-garde music and art from the 1960s onward. He became an important speaker and teacher at the Darmstadt summer courses for new music, where composers would discuss and perform new ideas and techniques in composition. His ideas were also very influential in contemporary group of artists that flourished during the 1960s and 1970s called Fluxus. Though Fluxus consisted of members in all art forms, not just music. Cage's principles that a piece of art could be developed without a preformed conception or purpose, and that the audience should play a role in performances remained important ideals in the group. Before we learn more about Cage's influence on later generations of avant-garde artists, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos about some of classical music's most interesting figures. As Cage reached an older age, new musicians came to the forefront of avant-garde music and performance, often in collaboration with other forms of art. Some important names, such as La Monte Young, Terry Riley, and Yoko Ono, who became the partner of John Lennon from the Beatles, among others. La Monte Young, in particular, followed in Cage's footsteps in regard to questioning the definition of music and art. Like Cage, he was first influenced by the works of modernist composers such as Schoenberg and Webern, but eventually came to be inspired by Eastern music and philosophy, chance music, and performance art. In 1960, he published a series of works that he entitled Compositions 1960. These short works often consisted of a simple text instruction rather than notes to be played by an instrument or sung by a vocalist. One such work lists 2 notes as a perfect fifth apart, with a simple instruction to be held for a very long time. Another asks the performer to release a butterfly into the audience and allow it to fly around. The piece is over when the butterfly flies away. A third suggestion that the performer leave hay and water for the piano to consume. The piece concludes when the piano either eats and drinks or decides not to do so. Though many of the instructions are ridiculous in nature, this kind of performance art was popular in certain artistic circles that strove to expand the meaning and push the boundaries of art. Beyond experimental performance art, La Monte Young also composed works that are now considered to be some of the first minimalist pieces. For instance, his 1958 Trio for Strings was composed almost exclusively using long sustained pitches and rests. He and his close friend Terry Riley, another important composer from this era, continued to develop this new style of music, which involved repeated patterns, rhythms and pitches, drones, and phase shifting. Riley later became especially partial to music using tapes. His most famous work, in C, pioneered an innovative new form that involved several different performers playing through 53 one-measured modules in the key of C for different lengths of time over a consistent piano pedal. Over time, minimalism became a highly popular style of contemporary classical music. Prominent composers such as Steve Reich, Philip Glass, and John Adams have used minimalist techniques with great critical and popular success. Today, composers of contemporary classical music draw on far and wide influences, including jazz, hip-hop, pop, rock, folk, and world music, as well as the harmonic, rhythmic, and formal techniques of their predecessors. However, most modern composers can trace their education and techniques back to John Cage in some way. Not only did he develop new and innovative methods of composition, he nearly single-handedly broadened the possibilities of what is possible within the music, joined audiences and musicians together in collaboration, and forced the public to really consider what music really is. No matter how silly the compositions by Cage and the composers he influenced might seem, in many ways, they started a revolution. Thanks for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, please hit like and subscribe for more content like this. See you next time.